So the universe does send signs. The question is whether or not you're paying attention. So, as I think about the last few years, and after going through all of the really major life altering events that I kind of went through, and if you need more context, please read the link above or click and watch the link above. Anyway, I realized that I have become really, really much more of a deep believer that, that somehow you live through all of these kinds of major things in order to kind of grab some really big teachable lessons, and also perhaps to probably give yourself an opportunity to pivot into maybe a different course of life, or maybe to kind of consider things that wouldn't have originally been in your path if things had stayed status quo. The way that I see it is that if you're going to go through a lot of these major things, it's probably because there's something waiting for you that you're meant to discover and would not have discovered if you hadn't have had these things happen. It's kind of like, for example, if you break up with someone and then you meet the love of your life a year after, right? Now, if you were still in that very toxic, draining relationship, you wouldn't have ended up meeting the love of your life. And that you probably had to go through that path in that order in order for you to be ready to receive that love, right? I think the same thing applies for any other major life events. Now, a lot of people may not believe that, but I have a hard time wrapping my head around the idea that I would go through a lot of major things, and think about all of the major things that you go through, and think about all the things that have come behind it, right? So if you kind of put things in that kind of context, I think it does a lot for your perspective. And in any case, although I've been able to kind of glean some really amazing life lessons from everything that has happened, I have taken these big key principles or tentpole ideas above all of them. And I think I like to consider them as kind of like guiding principles on the way that I approach life. Do with it what you will, but I think it would be really valuable to kind of share this insight and have you kind of think about how it may fit into your life a little bit. Principle 1 is make new life choices and don't be afraid of them. When something really, really life-altering happens, you are immediately being given a choice to decide if you want to go exactly back to status quo, or if you want to create and redefine a new reality. The way that I see it, if you're going to go through all of that kind of drama to kind of live all of these kind of big things, why would you just go back and do things the exact same way? Or do you want to give yourself the ability to kind of reconsidering the way that you approach things? It's all about just kind of giving yourself the ability to look at life through a slightly different lens, and maybe not just doing everything the exact same way. If things were going swimmingly before, then you wouldn't have to kind of like maybe give yourself the opportunity to consider something, right? But the way it seems to make sense is that you may just kind of want to take a second and reconsider that maybe life changes for a reason, and that you have the ability to kind of start trying to pave a different kind of path. Principle 2 here. It is time to prioritize yourself. Now, for a lot of us that are used to go, go, go and hustle and bustle, or may even be type A personalities, we may be really, really, really hell-bent on having, kind of things just continue to go and then putting everything else above our needs. But in doing that, you kind of end up dropping yourself to the list. And that's not really a healthy way to live. So as opposed to kind of living this kind of very like deteriorating way, maybe you want to give yourself the ability to kind of not only slow down, maybe move to a different beat a little bit, and then give yourself the opportunity to kind of start focusing more about what it is that you need. Take a hint from the universe that maybe it's okay to be at least a little bit selfish. And principle number 3, I would say, is that when something really life-changing happens to you, you may want to consider writing a new chapter that wasn't in place. We often kind of very blindly kind of go on autopilot or follow kind of like a playbook because we believe that that is the way that we're supposed to kind of do things, as opposed to the possibility that when life kind of goes a little chaotic or things kind of fall off the rails, that we now have the ability to kind of rewrite the playbook. I mean, this really pretty much connects to choice 1, or principle 1 rather, but the difference here is that now we are actually choosing to kind of write a completely different narrative if we want. And maybe that completely different narrative is meant to get us to kind of the bigger, higher purpose. It's just a way of kind of giving yourself a little bit of room to write a new narrative and to kind of be the star of a different or cooler book if you want to be. Anyway, these are just some thoughts that I've had, and some what I like to call like some larger guiding principles, as I realize that maybe it's up to us to kind of live life not just the standard way, but maybe to allow ourselves to be a little bit more courageous, to try a new path. And if you're gonna go through so much struggle or challenges or make all these choices in your life, then your best bet is to at least learn from them and turn those into kind of teachable moments that empower you to kind of maybe even make bigger choices that you probably wouldn't have been able to have foreseen. And that will probably even lead you to something even more powerful. You just have to give yourself the ability to kind of think with more creativity and more runway. What would you say are some of the biggest lessons that you've gotten as you kind of move through life, and what you've learned from some of the biggest things that have happened to you? Have you turned those into teachable moments, or you just kind of march on and let it go? Anyway, leave me some notes in the comments, and I look forward to seeing you at the next one.